Talking UNC Greensboro men's soccer with the head coach of the Spartans, Chris Rich. Coach, thanks for carving out some time to talk.
Hey, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, very excited to talk about your Spartans team coming off its 10th SoCon regular season title this season. Your third in your last 4 years. You've been to the NCAA tournament twice during your tenure as the head coach. How have you been able to build such a consistent winning program out of the Southern Conference at UNC Greensboro?
Yeah, first, I think there was already a foundation before I got here. It had been a while since they made the NCAA tournament, had that success, but there was a foundation of history. They won five national championships back in the 80s, right? And a lot of deep runs in the Division One NCAA tournament in the 2000s, the 2004 team, '05 team, '06 team that were Sweet 16 teams back to back to back years. So there's already a foundation of success here. And it's a place that's super unique in the fact that we don't have football, American football. We're not a small school. We have 20,000 or let's say 18,000 students. So we're a medium-sized school and we're a campus that really values the sport, right? We have an incredible soccer-specific facility that we share with our women's program. Great facilities across campus. Obviously, in a college soccer hotbed in North Carolina. Um, and we've been able to get the right kind of people on board. I think recruitment is everything, right? Getting the right staff members. We've been able to have some really good assistant coaches over the last 6 years during my time that have now moved on to head coaching roles, Division One, Division Two. That's been critical for us, and then obviously getting the right kind of players. We've recruited a lot of very good players, and so I think putting all that together, getting the right people on board, and already having the foundation here, it just needed some little TLC. Needed a shift in culture, a shift in I think player identification, a game model that we had set that I think is very unique to who we are, and then a league that is a smaller league, so we feel like it's a league where we can. I don't want to come across as too egotistical or too much confidence, but it's a league that we feel like we should be winning. Obviously, we fell short this year in the conference tournament, but we have a lot of confidence to be a team, a program that wins our league, and we've done that quite a few times. So I think a combination with all those things, and when you get to that point of whether it's making it into a tournament or not, the margins become super slim, but we've been quite fortunate and quite successful over the years for sure.
Before we go any further, you mentioned something, and you talked about North Carolina, the state being such a soccer hotbed. Obviously, there's the NWSL team, there's the MLS team now in Charlotte, but the college soccer game in North Carolina, Cary, of course, the longtime, not permanent home, but longtime home of the College Cup, including this year. Mike Noonan at Clemson, yourself at UNC Greensboro, Carlos Samuano at North Carolina women as well, winning the national championship this season. Just as a coach, how fun is it to be kind of down there in the melee of one of the best college soccer states in the United States?
Yeah, I think it's the best, and it's not even close. I think, I mean, not only obviously you have those four ACC programs in Wake, Duke, NC State, UNC, Chapel Hill, but I mean, UNC Wilmington's really good. We're really good. Campbell's really good. Elon's in and out of the NCAA tournament. High Point's in and out of the NCAA tournament. Charlotte as well. Gardner Webb just went on a great run this year, right? And I'm sure a few I'm missing, like Davidson and a couple others, right? It's just an elite college soccer state. It's super challenging because when you recruit an in-state player, you're typically recruiting against another very good program. So that's a challenge for sure. Um, but you want to recruit against the best. You want to be around other competitive people. Our non-conference schedule is typically very challenging, just because if you schedule regionally and you play Wilmington, High Point, Charlotte, the ACC programs, etc., those games are going to be very hard. A game on a Tuesday night against Campbell's a fight. A game against Elon's a fight. So, for us, it's great to be in that environment for sure, but it's also extremely challenging.
You mentioned the history of the UNC Greensboro program, I should say. And I feel like this might be something that's not talked about a lot when you talk about programs with that history. Yeah, it's cool to be a part of, but how much pressure does that existing history place on you all as a staff to continue to have that success?
Yeah, there's definitely pressure for sure. I think as a priority sport on our campus, our AD says it publicly that we're a tier one sport, right? We don't have the same amount of funding that, let's say, some Power Four programs have, right, from a budget, et cetera. But we're up there in terms of a university that prioritizes this sport. So that's a big reason why I'm here. That's a big reason why I think we're successful. Um, but what comes with that is pressure, is expectation to be successful. Like, there was previous coaches here that were very successful that just didn't make NCAA tournaments and they had to move on from right here. Um, there's pressure to be successful. But with that said, the pressure the university or administration puts on me is never going to be more than what we put on ourselves, right? We fell short this year. We were a 35 RPI team, and we thought we deserved to be in the NCAA tournament, and we didn't, and we lost in the conference tournament as well. And that's on me. That's on us, right? We expect to be a successful program. We expect to be an NCAA tournament team, pretty much every year. So. There's high standards and high expectations here, but we put them on ourselves, right? And we also expect a lot of our players, and we explain that and recruit at the highest level player that we possibly can, and we recruit against other big time programs. So, there's pressure there for sure, but you don't want to do this if you don't have pressure, if you don't have expectation to win, right? If you're too comfortable, if the moment I'm comfortable, the moment that happens, we'll probably start to become mediocre, and that's a time that as a coach, I think you need to retire or look at something else, right? I love what I do, but the pressure can be intense, but you got to enjoy that as well.
Listen, as somebody who has long tried to champion the college game, men's and women's, I love to hear that though. You talk about, the athletic department viewing men's soccer as a tier one type sport. We need more of that, right? I mean, to really explode college soccer into the zeitgeist. That's more of what we need.
For sure.
Looking at your season, and you mentioned the Southern Conference. It is a smaller league, but it is a stronger league. The race for the regular season title came down to that final game with ETSU. Obviously, Furman gets into the NCAA tournament. For those that don't know, there are really no days off in the SoCon, despite the size of the league.
Yeah, it's an interesting league because it's only six teams, right? Besides one program that struggled significantly over the years, but that's no easy game in VMI. There's the rest of us can pretty much win the league every single year. We've won it four to the last five, I think, or four to the last six in terms of regular season titles. Have a few conference tournament titles, but if you look at a program like Mercer, um, historically been very good in the conference tournament, been very successful in terms of their game model. Brad Russo does a great job. Furman went on their run year. Obviously, they have the history and success of many top players that have gone there. Doug Allison does a great job. Wofford, I think one of the best soccer playing teams in the country, do very well. So, it's an interesting league because it's small in size, but because it's small in size, we only play five conference games, right? Which for us, we want because we want to be able to schedule 12 non-conference games however we want. That means I can put together and articulate the RPI metric the best way we can. So we've been in the RPI at large conversation three out of the last 4 years. 22, we were 12 or 11 in the RPI in the NCAA tournament. So I feel like we're able to do that because we can put together a non-conference schedule that's elite or balanced with some high-end RPI opportunities. And then you have five conference games that, because there's only five, the room for error is super slim. So it will always, in our best years when we were top five in the country, top 10 in the country, it came down to the last kick always, right? Because you don't get 3 points and you only have 15 available. There's so many different scenarios where you can go from first to third on the last day, right? Or second to fifth on the last day. So it's a challenging league. I think every conference is challenging. People talk about, oh, this league's the best. Listen, like a league like the ACC, top to bottom, is the best league, right? But every conference game is challenging, right? Because there's so much on the line. I think conference tournaments in these mid-major leagues are extremely challenging because sometimes when you're only in one big league, I think this year We should have been a two-bid league, but that's not our choice. So these games become super challenging because there's so much on the line, right? And there's some really good teams. It's just a small league in general that just doesn't get that much respect. But we find the games very difficult. If we get 1 point or 3 points on the road at Mercer, we celebrate that. We had one this year and at 1 point this year at their place. I don't think many people get a win at Mercer. I would challenge any top program to go play there, right? And they don't, right? They don't get those games there, right? Because I think they would be afraid of losing that game, right? But we find them very challenging, so it's a good test for sure.
You touch on something there about Mercer, and you mentioned your non-conference schedule. I know you played Georgetown, you played ranked West Virginia, you went on the road, you beat Virginia. Um, as a mid-major-ish, type league, I know those terminologies more apply to basketball and football than they do college soccer. But as a team in your spot in your conference, how hard is it to get high caliber home games consistently when you are a team like what you all have done, been in the NCAA tournament, won your league, go on the road and beat very good programs?
Yeah, for us, we're fortunate. Probably there's a geographic aspect of this. We're located very close to a lot of very good programs. And then two, we have a great venue, great grass facilities, soccer specific, locker rooms right there, airport to travel into. So we've actually had zero issue getting quality home and homes. We had a home and home with West Virginia, home and home with Penn State. They came to us last year. We have home and homes with Charlotte. Clemson, we had a home and home with them. We beat them back-to-back years at their place and our place. The challenge really becomes for us, the more success we have, the more difficult it is to get those games. But we're able to get really good games because it goes both ways. Those traditional teams like Georgetown and Virginia and Clemson, or name another one, they want they need to balance their schedule too, but they also want teams that accumulate a lot of wins, that win their conference, that go to the NCAA tournament. So they also want good non-conference games, and we're one of those teams that those programs will play. We play a good brand of football. I've always felt like if you play a difficult brand and you're super direct and play a little bit more chaotic brand, whether it's right or wrong, I don't think many teams that want to play that just because it's a dogfight. But because we play a good brand and it's soccer versus soccer, we play in a good venue, it's easy to travel to us. We tend to get very good games, right? And because if you look at our average RPI this year was 35, 23 wasn't good. It was 11 in the RPI in 22. It was 40 in the RPI in 21. So we're typically a top 50 games. So if you look at that, we're a quad one opponent on the resume, right? So we're equally as good as any top Power Four ACC team a lot of the time. So I think we're an attractive game. We have a home and home. We're traveling to USF and UCF next year. They're likely to return to us. We have a lot of good. We have a home and home with Dayton and South Carolina. So we get good games here, and that's usually not a challenge. It's definitely a challenge for our league, and we're addressing that for other teams in our league. But for us, I think we're quite fortunate.
Yeah, the reason I ask, the common refrain amongst coaches that I talk to, Michael Seabolt with Missouri State, I talk to, even a guy like Rob Dow, they all say the same thing. It's hard to get teams to want to come to us. And so, from your all's perspective, like you mentioned, you all have that luxury, not just of the airport nearby, but also being in that good location with all of those prime college soccer teams. You also
Yeah.
talked about your home venue, and you go undefeated at home this year for the first time since 2002. Why is UNC Greensboro's soccer stadium such an elite venue? I know you touched on it a little bit ago, talking about the natural grass, which I'm personally partial to. Love a natural grass pitch. But why is your soccer stadium such an elite venue?
Yeah, well, we were actually undefeated in the regular season 22 as well, but lost to Indiana in the Elite Eight. So I think that loss is the stat that you're seeing. But in the regular season, we were undefeated as well, because I think our only loss that year was against Campbell on the road. Um, Listen, we have a great facility for sure. It's a big field. We play a good brand of football. I think that suits us. We get good support, good atmosphere. We will average anywhere between 1,000 on a okay night, or not 800 or 1,000 on an okay night. And then if we host a big team, we'll get a few thousand at the game. And I remember when we hosted Ohio State and hosted Indiana in the Elite Eight and the round of 32 and hosted Clemson, we had 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people there. Um, so I think that matters too. And then there's the comfort of sleeping in your own bed and not having to travel. I think there's some logistical things there as well. But for whatever reason, all those factors come into play, and we enjoy playing at home. Again, great stadium, great surface. The guys enjoy it. We certainly need to get better playing on the road, although we've had some really good results on the road recently, as well. But we like playing at home. It suits us, and hopefully that success continues.
Listen, I love it. When you look around the nation and you see these rowdy college soccer venues, as I'm sure you've probably come to realize as we've been sitting here talking, big college soccer guy. Love college soccer. I always tell people, I even told Rob Dow this when we talked the other day, that I feel like the best way to get people sort of ingratiated into the sport of soccer, start them with college soccer, because what do we love as a country about college sports? The passion, the pageantry, the rivalry, the history, and then you blend it with our favorite sport of soccer. And so when you see these rowdy venues like Urals and you pack thousands of people in there, it warms my heart as a college
Yeah,
soccer sicko to see that.
I love.
Looking at your team as a whole, Okawa, Player of the Year in the Southern Conference, an all-region selection. What did he bring to this team this season?
Yeah, he's an interesting player. He came to us from another school, transferred to us, and played for us for 3 years. And he's an unbelievable great kid, hardworking, trains on his own. So he takes care of so many aspects off the field that you never have to worry about. But he's a player that evolved and developed, which is a rare thing nowadays, because most players are in this culture of transfer, and this culture of instant gratification. Well, he didn't on our 22 team that made the Elite Eight. He didn't play. A 23 team, he was in and out of the starting lineup. Our first 4 or 5 games this year, he didn't play much, right? And then all of a sudden this year, there was a change against our game at Davidson. He was excellent in that game. Him and a few other players, so where we made a change when we went on a run, and he was a big reason why. What he brings to the table, he's around 92 to 94% every single game in terms of passing completion. He doesn't lose the ball, super technical profile. Um, he has an elite striking shooting ability. He had, I think, 8 goals, 7 goals, a handful of assists as well. Fantastic on restarts. I mean, he scored some big time goals for us. And where he was, if you give that kid a cutback on his left foot, he's most likely not there's not a chance he's most likely scoring it. So he just got a rhythm with it. He was super confident, believing in himself. We believed in him, and he was getting the opportunity, but he deserved the opportunity by staying humble, by continuing to work, even when that opportunity wasn't presenting right in front of him. So he was a good player this year for us and a very good team, and we're super happy that he was able to get that recognition at the end of the year.
For you yourself, your coaching career has taken you all over. You had stops at Barry, your alma mater. You worked at FIU. You spent 12 years in the ACC across 3 different programs. We talked about a couple of them: Duke, North Carolina, also Virginia Tech as well. How has all of those stops shaped your college soccer journey as a coach, and tactically as well shaped who you are as a coach?
Oh my God, it'll be a long probably explanation. I'll try to do my best to explain it, but I'm super fortunate for sure. I worked for some incredible head coaches, and alongside some incredible assistant coaches. Um, when I was at Barry, my alma mater, I was a young assistant coach that didn't know anything, to be honest. I was super naive. I worked for a guy in Steve McCrath that won a national championship there. I was super successful. That was awesome. And there I kind of learned the operations of college soccer, what to do, what not to do. But really, I was just learning. Then I went to FIU, Munga Aketebi, great coach, great person. You may not know him just because he's out of the game now, but he's a college soccer legend. And then I got to jump at the opportunity at working at Virginia Tech. Mike Brisendine's still there. Um, Incredible human being. Still talk to him almost daily. Great friend of mine. And then you go to a place like UNC, you don't turn down that opportunity. And I went to Chapel Hill and for Carlos Simwano. And ironically, when I was there, I was working with two of the assistant coaches that are there now, and one other that was one of my closest friends. And then I was there for a few years, and then ironically went from UNC to Duke, right? And why would you do that? Well, it was a bigger opportunity professionally. I think there's roles and responsibility were a huge factor. But then I had the opportunity to work at another incredible institution with John Kerr, and all those places first off, have incredible people, not just the coaching staff, not just the players you get to work with, but the people in the athletic department, people in the university. A place like Duke, these people are the best at what they do. In terms of athletic administrators, they're all future ADs, all across, and they have become since I've left, and probably will still continue that trend. And same thing at UNC Chapel Hill, right? You're working with the best people, so I think you got to create really good relationships at those places from a off the field standpoint. You certainly got to recruit and evaluate high-end national team players, recruit at the highest level. So you got to learn and challenge yourself from a recruiting standpoint in terms of what to look for, how to evaluate, how to get the job done in the recruiting trail, because those margins are super slim when you're recruiting against other top-end universities. And then the tactical standpoint, listen, each coach, I stole things, stole ideas, training sessions, philosophies. I was a sponge during my entire time. In each place, I had a different role and responsibility, sometimes big, sometimes small. I remember when I first got to UNC, coach didn't give me much, right? Like in terms of significance. I ran the operations for the program, did a lot of camp stuff. But I tell you what, he told me to move a cone, I moved a cone. He told me to do this, I did that. And anytime he gave me a significant responsibility, I ate it up. And the way I looked at it was I was in my high 20s, and I got to work for and learn from one of the best, and compete for a national championship. And then when I went to Duke, for sure, my opportunities and my role grew, and I was able to learn more from by doing, and again, picking up more different things. And along the way, you're just figuring out like what you like and what you don't like. And then certainly when you become the head coach, you're ready for some things, you're not ready for others. And I felt like I had a game model set tactically. I felt like I knew how I wanted to play. I felt like I could identify recruits and build a roster, but I wasn't ready for how to manage people. I never done that before, right? And I never had the opportunity to manage up administration or manage down. I had to learn and grow through that process too. But you know, I've had incredible mentors, and some of them have become great friends of mine, and some of them, I've just been able to learn from professionally as well. But I find myself very fortunate that I've been able to work at all those incredible institutions, and it certainly shaped who I am now.
There are not many people who can say they've been on both sides of that Duke UNC rivalry on Tobacco Road. What's maybe the wildest memory you have from that rivalry between those two schools?
Oh man. I've had good and bad ones. Um, when we were number one in the country at UNC, we went to Duke, and we lost 2-1. Sean Davis, who's playing the MLS now, scored an incredible free kick, and that was a bad memory, for sure. And then I went to the other side at Duke, and um, unfortunately, I have not been on the right side of many of those. I think we went 1-1 or 2-1 when I was at UNC, and unfortunately, when I was at Duke, we never beat Carolina. We Duke has gone on to beat Carolina since I left, so maybe I'm the bad luck charm. But um, I don't know if I have set memories of that rivalry. It's just intense. There's nothing like it. But man, I've been able to have the ACC games are great memories. I remember when Maryland was in the league, going to Maryland in ACC tournaments. I remember those things. Duke, playing Clemson, playing UNC Chapel Hill, playing Virginia. Remember going on the road to Virginia and Brian White scoring, and and a kid named Daniel Wright scoring a big time goal and some great memories there. So I think all those places you're always playing at incredible venues against incredible coaches, against incredible rosters and players. So when you look back, it's pretty unique, and we're trying to do some of that now at UNCG as well. But it's definitely some great memories for sure.
You talk about the venues, and I know the answer to this question is going to be obviously your home stadium. But
Yeah.
outside of where you currently coach at, where is maybe your favorite venue to visit during your travels during the regular season?
At Maryland, I don't think anything for us, I think, has rivaled that for me. Um, you're just when that place is rocking and their students are actually, and you go to a game where students are in town and they have their fans behind the goal and the fans on the side as well. You can't hear yourself, right? And so credit to what they've built there. Sasha is obviously a legend in our game, but um, I think that's one of the hardest places. In recent years, I think Clemson has done a great job. They put their home support directly behind the visiting bench. They put a band right behind the visiting bench. So again, you can't hear much. You try to communicate with the referee to your players. I don't I don't think that can happen, right? It's non-existent. But I would say both those venues. There's other places like at Wake. Um, they traditionally don't lose many games at Wake. I think that's a very difficult venue. I don't view that as a difficult a place from the atmosphere all the time. But in terms of the quality of the opponent, no disrespect to what Bobby's doing, but the quality of their side, I think, and the way they keep the ball is where I find it one of the hardest places to play. But I'm sure there are others I'm not thinking about right now. Like at Mercer, good luck playing at Mercer. I wouldn't say the atmosphere or the venue or anything like that, but it's just a hard place to play in terms of how narrow that field is and their style of play. But in terms of the hardest places to play, I'd say at Maryland and at Clemson are two of the hardest in the country.
Hey, listen, as someone who has spent his fair share of time calling Virginia soccer games, listen, that Virginia Maryland rivalry, I've seen some of those games at Maryland. You are 100% right. We are running out of time on the Zoom here. I just got an alert. So I promised you before we got on here that I wasn't going to keep you too long, and I'm sitting here talking your leg off. So I want to ask you one more question before we go. We know college soccer and college sports are constantly changing. I mean, just over the last 6 to 8 months, how vastly different it's changed with scholarship limits and changing and revenue sharing, and of course, NIL and the transfer portal in years past. What is maybe one change you would like to see in college soccer that you think would progress the game forward?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the is stretching out our season, right? And there's been a big push for this 2 semester model and the 21st century model that I certainly support, and I'm 100% behind. UNCG at the time of voting, we were behind as well. I think we have to get to a point where we're not, it's not sprints, where you're not playing 2 games and sometimes 3 games in 7, 8 days, right? I think that's super challenging on the players. Certainly from the preparation and recovery for the coaches and the players, it's impossible. I think that's the biggest change, right? The we have a challenge right now of getting the right amount of support in December and late November when the most important games in our sport are happening, right? I mean, look at Vermont, look at what Marshall's doing. There's many other quote unquote high majors or mid majors that can win national championships or compete for them. I think Vermont's a great story for sure. We're probably the only sport where many teams can win it outside the Power Four, right? I don't, maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't think there are others. I think baseball, you have Coastal Carolina that's super successful. I know JMU and some sports are good, but there's not many across the board, certainly not in football or basketball. I think it's hard in other sports. And our sport's super unique. I feel like we have so much to capitalize on, and we're just not taking advantage of that. And a part of it is we're thrown into the fall into this condensed season. We're competing against football, and then we have to overlap with men's basketball. Where some of these spring sports, like the lacrosses, what a season! The softballs and baseball, they get so much support towards the latter end of the spring, where they're playing. Where we could potentially play one game a week and playing great weather and grow our sport by growing attendance at these venues and these great things. Listen, Cary's down the road for me, and I don't go every year because it's freezing cold, right? And I've been and even when I'm depressed, I want to go support the support. But it's freezing cold, right? So like if I'm thinking as a college soccer purist and put everything into the sport, what's the neutral going to say, right? So I think we have a lot of opportunity to grow there, and I don't know what that means yet. There's still some details that need to be worked on, like finances. But I think people, the leaders in our sport, are working on that as we speak. But I think stretching out our season, having our season at the highest point in good weather moments would help. Um, listen, I think we have a unique sport. I think we have some really good some of the best coaches among all sports in the country. We have programs like Vermont Marshall, like us, like Akron, like many New Hampshire, many other JMU. I'm missing others, right? Many other good mid majors that can compete for a national championship. What other sport can say that? So I think we have so much to capitalize on, and I think we haven't even like come close to like turning over or taking a big step in that sense. But I think that would go a long way. Certainly, investing in the sport across the board. We talked about it earlier. We find it fortunate that we're a tier one sport, but a lot of college campus, even at Power Four programs, they don't invest in men's soccer like they should. They invest more in obviously men's basketball and football, and then the women's sports because of Title IX. But our sport is kind of pushed aside sometimes. So I think investing more in our sport, stretching out a little bit, I think there'll be a return when you do that. But certainly there has to be a return on a financial level. So I'd love to see those. I know you asked for one. I'd love to see those two changes. And I think both of them are connected.
Hey, I'm definitely on board with the 21st century model too. Obviously, the circumstances were terrible, but I remember calling games in 2020 when the season ended in the spring. And I got to tell you, calling a conference championship game where I don't have to wear a pea coat while I'm calling it, as much as I love pea coats, I got a closet full of them. It's much nicer to be able to just wear a suit and enjoy the nice weather. That was a fun time. So I am 100% on board with that model. And that is gaining steam. A lot of the coaches I've talked to on this show have all said the same thing, that what you said. I don't know what the financials look like, maybe the logistics of it, but it needs to happen at some point.
For sure. And I think the pioneers of our sport, the Carlos Zamorano, Sasho, and Jeremy Gunn, Todd Yeagley, Mike Noonan, those guys are Bobby Moose, I think. Those guys are putting a lot of work. I think Carlos and Sasha are spearheading that, a lot of work to get this done. And I think that will only help the future of our sport and the future of coaches like myself.
Coach, I really appreciate you carving out some time to talk. Very excited to see how things go as we move into the spring. And then before we know it, college soccer will be right back in the fall.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.